Got late. This is chapter 18, summer 2003. On May 4th, 2003, thousands of friends and family members packed into the First Baptist Church in Modesto to bid farewell to Lacey and Connor. Everyone in attendance was fully aware that it would have been Lacey's 28th birthday. Scott had requested permission to attend. Not surprisingly, he was turned down. The jail arranged to beam the services into his cell. As the ceremony proceeded, it was reported that Lacey's accused killer was meeting with his attorney instead of watching the services, although the defense sources tried to dismiss this as just another attempt to portray Scott as a heartless killer. In fact, they said, he and his family had their own quiet service inside of the jail. Scott's brother Mark expressed a desire to attend Lacey's funeral, but was angrily admonished by his father. "We'll disown you if you do," Lee Peterson reportedly warned his son. Scott was under high scrutiny and in isolation because of rumored death threats. Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department spokesperson Kelly Houston confirmed this on April 21st. Some of the inmates in our facility that have nothing to lose with the three strikes law in California have made some mention of taking care of him, Houston said, venturing that some inmates would love the notoriety of having done something or to have some attachment to this case. The fact that Scott also was charged as a baby killer increases the chances that he would be the target of violence. We got some NASA traffic. Houston said, venturing that some inmates would love the notoriety of having done something to or have some attachment to this case. The fact that Scott was also charged as a baby killer increased the chances that he would be the target of violence. In the prison hierarchy, those charged with crimes against children were on the lowest rung. His 6-by-9-foot maximum security cell, outfitted with nothing but a metal bed and 3-inch mattress and a stainless steel sink and toilet, would be his first home for many months. In June 2003, Amber Fry, her lawyer Gloria Allred, and Detective Bueller went to Stanislaus County District Attorney's office to meet with Deputy District Attorney Dave Harris for the first time. Harris served with Rick DiStasio as the trial prosecutors in the Peterson case. First showed Amber a courtroom. Harris, serving with Rick DeSantos as the trial prosecutors in the Peterson case, first showed Amber a courtroom so that it would seem familiar if she was called to testify at the upcoming preliminary hearing. Later in that meeting, Amber gave Bueller a photocopy of a 2-page penciled letter from Scott, dated on April 25th, in which he wrote that he would be acquitted of the charges and that while in custody he would use this time to do the Lord's work. He thanked Amber for leading him to God and apologized for the fact that she had become embroiled in such a media frenzy. He said that he was looking forward to getting a preliminary trial over with, as if he believed that the proceeding would end any suspicion that he had been involved in Lacey's death. May 4th was Lacey's birthday, and he was asking friends to fly a kite in her memory. He ended the letter by saying that children are miracles and gifts. Only a few months earlier, Scott had told his devout girlfriend that his failure to attend church could jeopardize their relationship. During their affair, however, Scott had realized how effective a dose of religion could be in manipulating Amber, and he continued to do so from his cell. Amber also gave Bueller 2 emails from Scott, whose addresses were purposelife2003@yahoo.com. She received both of them before his arrest, but in hindsight it seems that Scott was trying to lay some good character groundwork. In the first, dated April 3rd, Scott said that he'd just flown a kite with his two nephews. In the second, received 5 days later, Scott explained that he was helping to rebuild a deck at a home for battered women. While there, he said he noticed a young man staring at him and recognized him as someone he had tutored at the St. Vincent de Paul Center for Homeless Children while he was in high school. On June 4th, the district attorney announced that the brown van rumored to belong to the real killers was not connected to the Peterson murders. Several days later, a judge issued a gag order to all parties in the case, but he also unsealed the search warrants as the press had requested. In mid-June, District Attorney investigator Kevin Bertolato arranged to meet a man named Harvey Kemple at a McDonald's in Modesto. Related by marriage to the Rocha family, Uncle Harvey was the second person who ever heard Scott claim that he was golfing and not fishing on Christmas Eve. Kemple remembered remarking to his wife, "What was Scott doing on Christmas Eve?" His wife, Gwen, replied, "Scott told me he went fishing." Later, the couple's daughter overheard them discussing the discrepancy and mentioned that Scott told her he had been at work that day. A colorful character, Kemple became one of the better-known witnesses during the trial when he related a story about Scott burning the chicken he was barbecuing at a July 4th birthday party. Scott was more upset about burning a damn chicken than finding Lacey, Kemple griped. On June 26, 2003, Judge Girolami ordered that 176 recently discovered wiretaps of Scott Peterson's phone calls be handed over to the defense as part of the discovery. The recordings turned up on a computer hard drive on June 13, 2003. 5 days later, prosecutors revealed their existence when they asked the court to review them for relevance. Prosecutors maintained that no one, not even the investigator in charge of the wiretaps, had listened to the recordings. Ultimately, the judge denied the defense's request to throw out those nearly 3,000 other secretly recorded conversations. On March 3, 2004, DeLucci ruled that the tapes would be admissible at trial. That same day, DeLucci also ruled to execute the dog tracking evidence gathered around the couple's home and inside of Scott's warehouse, striking a partial blow to the prosecution's case. Despite calling it at best iffy, the judge did allow the trailing dog evidence from the Berkeley Marina search. The ruling was a partial victory for Geragos, who had argued that the dog gathering evidence was complete voodoo and utter nonsense. In late September, investigators returned to the San Francisco Bay to continue their search for additional evidence. In particular, they were looking for other body parts and concrete anchors. After countless delays, the preliminary hearing in Stanislaus County Courthouse got underway on October 29, 2003. As expected, it was a huge media event. It was the first time the public and the press had got a first-hand look at many of the people they had been hearing about for months. Scott and Lacey's friends and family members, detectives and forensic evidence, even the couple's housekeeper. Among those who garnered extraordinary attention was Scott's high-profile trial lawyer, Mark Geragos. Known as Susan McDougal's attorney during President Clinton's trials, he also handled Winona Ryder's shoplifting case. Ironically, Geragos represented Gary Conduit during the investigation into Modesto resident Chandra Levy's disappearance and murder in Washington, D.C. Perhaps his most notorious client was pop star Michael Jackson. Geragos had been the first attorney to represent the singer in his 2003 child abuse investigation, although Jackson would be dismissed Jackson would soon dismiss him, reportedly because of the attention he was giving the Peterson case. Before Scott hired Geragos, the attorneys had appeared regularly on Larry King Live to talk about the case. While he now took the role of a defense attorney on the shows, Geragos still made note of the critical evidence such as the computer title charts, the cell phone records, and of course what he called the enormous coincidence that the very place that he put himself, the very alibi, if you will, turns out to be the exact place where the body was recovered. That is either an incredible coincidence or a damning piece of evidence. Is it a slam dunk? King asked his guest, Mark Geragos. Geragos didn't sound terribly bullish. Even though it's circumstantial evidence, the most damning piece of circumstantial evidence comes out of his mouth and his own hands when he hands the police that receipt from the very location where 2 miles away she's found, Geragos said. I mean, that is just a devastating thing. If Scott Peterson did this crime, he went on, and everybody's, innocent until proven guilty, and as I've said, it's damning circumstantial evidence. The man is a sociopath if he did this crime. I mean, there's no other way to put it, Geragos told King. This is his wife and his unborn baby boy. If he's the one who took the two of them up there to put concrete around them and threw them into the ocean and concocted this story and went out onto Diane Sawyer and gave this impassioned plea with the tears, I mean, that's not somebody that's generally you're gonna want to have to give a manslaughter conviction to. Even though the case had first broken nearly a year earlier, public interest was escalating rather than fading. The initial fascination was understandable. The Christmas Eve disappearance of a beautiful young mother-to-be, the family's heartbreaking pleas for help, and the reticent husband with a dubious alibi all made good copy for the press. While most were skeptical of Scott's story, he was also still good-looking, a white, middle-class suburban husband who seemed to have a wonderful marriage and a happy life. Interest surged when the affair with Amber Frey was revealed, and again when the breaking news reports announced that the two bodies had washed up along the shoreline. When Lacey and Connor were identified, rumors began to circulate that Scott had slipped away from the police. His dramatic pursuit and arrest on April 18, 2003, closed one phase of the case and opened another. Despite what even Geragos acknowledged that Scott had all but hanged himself in the court of public opinion, the state was nevertheless saddled with an almost purely circumstantial case. Many observers still asserted that the evidence was insufficient to produce a conviction. The prosecution had no DNA, no confession, and precious little crime scene forensics to work with. The preliminary hearing would be the first chance for the prosecutors to lay out their findings. It would also be the first time Mark Geragos could ask a judge to dismiss the case for the lack of evidence. The hearing lasted 11 days. Prosecutors announced that they would not introduce GPS or wiretap evidence during the preliminary hearing, but did not exclude the possibility that they would offer this at trial. Nor at this stage did they intend to call Amber Frey. Geragos wanted Amber's attorney, Gloria Allred, barred from the proceedings. Nothing if not feisty, Allred was not about to be removed without a fight. Judge Girolami overruled Geragos' motion, but instructed Allred not to discuss any testimony with her client. Geragos also attempted to have Allred placed under the same gag order that applied to the principal's attorneys and witnesses, but to dismay, the judge refused. On television and in print, Allred would lash out at Geragos and his client throughout the trial proceedings. The prosecutor's first witness was a DNA expert. Dr. Constance Fisher, an FBI forensic analyst, testified about the hair clasped in the pair of pliers found in Scott's boat. Speaking in broad terms, Fisher explained that the DNA recovered from a hair with no root attached was mitochondrial, meaning that the information from this analysis was not be as precise as if it had been obtained from nuclear DNA. Yet important findings would still emerge from the genetic material. Comparing it with the hairs from Lacey's brush and DNA from her mother, the experts established probability about the source hair. Roughly one in 112 individuals in the Modesto area would have possessed the DNA profile of the hair in question, and Lacey could not have been excluded as a contributor. One person who was clearly eliminated as a match was Scott. Before she could testify about these findings, the defense team challenged the science in the three-pronged attack. Geragos attacked first the validity of the testing and then the database from which the information was drawn. Finally, he asserted that the sample was contaminated. Fisher insisted that there had been no contamination during her test and maintained that her conclusions were accurate. The judge finally ruled that the expert's testimony was admissible and permitted her to state her conclusions. The defense called its own DNA expert to rebut Dr. Fisher's findings. Dr. William Shields, a professor at the State University of New York College of Environmental Forestry, testified that 1 in every 33 samples of DNA could give a false exclusion or match. According to the current FBI database of 5,071 samples, this shared genetic sequence is found in less than 1% of Caucasians. Okay, so the wind tunnel's going at Ames Research Center, and I'm yelling. I gotta move away from the wind tunnel. You guys want to see my base? Okay, so we got a rocket. Look at my rocket. We're out in Moffett Field, California. Scope it. Be about it. So this is a refurbished military base. We used to be the primary focus for aeronautics, and now we're NASA. Brrr. But that big building right there is a wind tunnel. Second biggest wind tunnel in the country. Hey. The defense called its own DNA expert to rebut Dr. Fisher's findings. Dr. William Shields, a professor at the State University of New York's College of Environmental Forestry. Okay. Sorry. While Fisher concluded that the DNA from their hair sample could be found in about 1 out of 112 Caucasians, Shield estimated the sequence could be found in as many as 1 in 9. Detective Bueller, Owen, Hendy, and Evers were the police witnesses. Hendy testified about collecting the hairs from the pliers, but on cross-examination, Geragos tore into him, suggesting that sloppy police work or something more insidious had conspired to create additional evidence in the form of a second piece of hair. Yet it was again established to the court's satisfaction that the hair may have simply been broken in two after it was removed from the pliers and placed into the evidence bag. At one point during the cross-examination, when Harris objected to the question from Geragos as double speculation, Geragos retorted, "Like this entire case." The preliminary detective on the case, Al Brocchini, spent the better part of 3 days on the stand. After outlining the investigation timeline from December 24th forward, he responded to a line of accusatory questions posed by defense lawyer Kirk McAllister, who had not yet left Scott's defense team. Trying to establish that Brocchini had rushed to judgment about Scott, he argued that Brocchini had other police officers didn't pursue leads that might have exonerated the defendant. Outside of the courtroom, Lee and Jackie Peterson expressed their feelings about the police, in particular their distaste for Detective Brocchini. "You should be ashamed," Jackie shouted when the detective passed. "I've seen bums before," Lee Peterson chimed in. The couple's aggression towards police officers wasn't limited to the preliminary hearing. Even before Scott's arrest, police overheard Jackie Peterson making derogatory remarks about Al Brocchini taped on a phone conversation with her son. In one conversation, she got very personal, impugning Brocchini's family, even his mother, in her comments. In court, Dr. Brian Peterson, the coroner who performed both autopsies, delivered his findings. Laci's family had chose to leave the courtroom during his testimony, fearing that it would be too difficult to hear. Though the co-prosecutor Dave Harris's prosecutor Dave Harris's questioning, Dr. Peterson argued that Connor had not been born alive, as the defense would argue. He testified that Laci's uterus had been intact when her body was submerged in the bay, and that the condition of the two bodies was dramatically different, leading Peterson to conclude that Connor had been sheltered in her womb until just before he was found. Under cross-examination, Garagos tried to elicit testimony that Connor was born alive and had taken a breath. Dr. Peterson responded that he could not rule out that possibility, but said it was unlikely based on his findings. While being held in jail, Scott was reportedly shown the autopsy photos of Laci and Connor. "She's got no fucking head," he reportedly cried out, breaking down in his sobs. The revelation that Laci's body had trace amounts of caffeine also upset Scott, prompting him to exclaim, "They tortured her!" On November 18th, Judge Girolami ruled that there was enough evidence to bind Scott over for trial. He was formally arraigned on December 3rd, 2003. His plea of not guilty came as no surprise, but Garagos' request for a trial date of January 26, 2004, less than 2 months away, came as a great shock. On December 12, 2003, the defense filed a motion for a change of venue. Scott could not receive a fair trial in his wife's hometown of Modesto, they contended, because of all the pretrial publicity, including 8,000 articles published worldwide, about 150 stories in the local papers. On January 8th, the change of venue was granted. Girolami ruled that the jury could be found in one of 15 adjacent larger counties. While Garagos fought hard to move the trial to his home turf in Los Angeles, the case was finally sent to Redwood City in neighboring San Mateo County. In the weeks before the preliminary hearing, Garagos nearly lost control of the case. Scott was reportedly dissatisfied with his high-priced defense attorney, expressing frustration that Garagos wasn't visiting him in jail and claiming that his questions weren't being addressed. Scott's parents had reportedly forked over a hefty $1 million retainer, and Scott wanted some pampering. In mid to late September, Scott went to the extent of signing a substitution agreement with another firm. The firm reportedly agreed to take Scott's case because the partners believed that there was viable defense and because it was winnable. When Geragos learned of the agreement, a member of the inner circle later revealed he went to jail to confront Scott in person. He reportedly told Scott he would fry if he made the switch. He also guaranteed Scott a victory, and according to sources, got Scott to sign another retainer agreement. In the months ahead, Lee and Jackie Peterson solicited funds from friends and family to help offset the cost of Scott's defense. The $1 million retainer had wiped them out, and Geragos would come back to them mid-trial asking for more money. While several of Scott's siblings reached into their pockets to help, reportedly there was one family member who did not participate. While Scott's half-sister Susan Cudillo regularly went before the cameras defending her brother, she reportedly did not contribute to the defense fund. In another of the odd coincidences surrounding this case, I later learned that Cudillo was constructing an in-ground infinity pool in the backyard of her new home. Like Scott himself, she had failed to give to others while quietly arranging to sink her money into a lavish swimming pool, dumping tens of thousands of dollars into its construction. As Scott sat in jail, Susan threw a big party to unveil her brand new swimming pool. Have a good day.